there's a quiet shift happening in how we think about healing. Less force, less invasion, and more listening to the body's own signals. And when recovery becomes smarter instead of harder, it changes the whole game. Not only just the physical health, but the peace of mind as well. And folks, today's conversation sits right at that intersection. Welcome back to another episode of Healthy Mind, Healthy Life, the space where physical health, mental clarity, and sustainable well being is met. Today's guest is Dr. Tommy Rhee, a sports chiropractor, author, and pioneer in cell free regenerative medicine. With experience spanning elite athletics, clinical innovation, and military service, Dr. Rhee brings a very grounded and a real world view on recovery, performance, and where healing is headed next. So, in today's episode, we'll explore how non invasive regenerative approaches can support not just the body's repair, but long term mental resilience and trust in the healing process. So, Doctor, it's a pleasure to have you here on the show today. And although I'm not from the medical background, but I hope that we get into a sort of a natural and honest conversation. So before we get into kind of the science and innovation that this is all about, I'm curious as to when you look back across your journey in sports medicine and regenerative care, what moment is the most, or you would say, most clearly changed how you understood healing at that time?
Well, thank you for having me as a guest on your show. I'm excited about this. So that question, I think the biggest thing that I walked into this world of sports med, chiropractic, healing and recovery and getting back on the field was the idea of there's a lot of talk about the workout, the compression, where you're pushing yourself to max and then having that world, kind of like compromised tissue. So then you have to look at the other side, which is the recovery. You need the recovery as much as you need the aggressive training, the workouts, even the game, right? You need the two go hand in hand. So what I noticed that athletes, because they have that mindset, like, no pain, no gain, let's push through the pain. Well, you have to be careful because you may be pushing yourself into the world of overtraining. You're not allowing yourself to recover correctly. And then you're going to, right, get more into the injury world and be chronic and then have a sort of like a change in your biomechanics because you're changing that particular injury and you're trying to utilize different muscles to do that action. So the one thing that I noticed with these athletes is that recovery, and not having the knowledge to understand, there's a time to shut it down. There's a time to like recover. So the problem is that athletes, especially the high elite athletes, they want a fast recovery. So you look for every mechanism, the illegal stuff, of course, we all know about, the PEDs, right? Performance enhancement drugs. Then you have to think about the next thing, right? Then you have to think about like nutrition, and then you have to think about like what's allowed out there. Well, that's where regenerative medicine is, right? You allow there's your body has the ability to regenerate. Now, as
Right.
we get injured or we get older, we start losing our signal. We start having a signal that turns on our existing tissue. Well, that regenerative medicine gives you that powerful signal into your body that says, turn on, make it happen, rebuild faster, and then heal better, right? So then you can get back on the field. So once I saw that kind of like that void in that world of like recovery and speeding it up, and then the regenerative medicine, it's about now how do you deliver those signals into your body? Because it's currently, it's injected, right? So that's how we look at things. You have like a elbow pain. Well, they do an injection. Either it's going to be a regenerative medicine type of thing, or is it a pain management? Something is going to be injected. Well, the problem with that is that
Right.
when you do the injection, you create a secondary injury because you had the primary injury, then you have the secondary with the needle. So now you have to, contest with two of those things. So what do you got to do? You got to have a different mechanism or delivery system. And that's where the future is moving into a topical transdermal agent that can pull those little signals through the skin into the damaged tissue to signal your existing tissue, turn on, wake up, regenerate. So that's how this whole thing evolves where I'm at now.
Wow. I mean, this is I'm new to be. So, what you're suggesting is kind of, the direct transferation of the drug to the damaged tissue via the skin. Is that what you're suggesting?
Exactly, yeah. So,
Wow.
you heard of, like, there's other type of, medication, especially with the actual, they call it TRT, right? There's a testosterone replacement therapy, and there's hormone therapy, and that's used in a topical sense too. So there's an ability to get it through the skin. You just need an agent to pull it through the skin.
Wow. I mean, that's uh I mean, it's one of the biggest thing that how far I think the medical scene has come from. So uh, I've read about this that the average age of a human back in 1800, and you wouldn't believe me when I say this, was around 30. Okay, and here we are, and today here we are, with the advancements, kinds of advancement, and we would touch back on that point, maybe towards the end. But for now, I just want to ask you that there's a widespread belief that recovery has to be, aggressive or invasive to be effective, right? But what you just explained right now. It's kind of the opposite. So, in your experience, where does that misconception usually come from?
I think so athletes wanna do something, right? You're talking to someone that's pushing themselves in the physical sense in a practice game. So then when we recover, they think, "Well, I have to do that much aggressive movement in that action of playing and practicing and, training with recovery. So I've gotta get as strong and that kinda like, that physical push." So that's why you hear people like, "Hey, let's get really aggressive and push ourselves to recover," you know? Like doing like there's a lot of like therapy in biomechanics when you have like inflammation in your knee. So they'll say some therapists will say, all right, let's utilize that knee and properly use it and then push that inflammation out and get it going. Well, the problem is that if you have a compromised tissue and you start using it and you don't give it a chance to mend back, well, when you're using it in a rehab sense, you're still compromising, you're still utilizing it and you're damaging it more and more. So these athletes need to shut it down. So the misconception that people want to get really actively, in the recovery, you have to say, all right, what do I really have? When I really have an injury or something, then it's that sense of I need to shut it down. Let the tissue proximate each other, get close to each other, and then let it heal in its proper mode. The neat thing about, when we're young and we're, that age can allow you to heal faster, you put it in the right environment, either with some type of modality like a device like a laser, LED light, shockwave, something, it will have the ability to heal because it's in the right environment. But then when you take it into like an aggressive, like, I'm gonna move that knee, I'm gonna push through this pain, I'm gonna get that active recovery. Well, the active
That's not
recovery
how
is
it
not,
works. Yeah.
yeah. So the active recovery is not so much about that tissue's compromised. It's about the surrounding tissue that have the healthy cells that you use that to push out the other stuff out. So you have to be careful where you're actually applying that stress.
Well, that's interesting, Dr. Tommy. And I know that some of the regenerative treatments that we are talking about right now are scientifically proven. Some are, I believe, promising, but still under research. And there are some that are overhyped or falsely marketed. So if you talk about the context, from the medical terms and from the spiritual context, from the wellness context as well, where do you think is the fine line? And I mean, is the tissue regeneration that we're focusing on today? I mean, is it completely dependent on some kind of biosignaling, or do you think the mental and the spiritual healing also comes into place in this particular treatment?
That's a great question because there is that physical side and the spiritual side, the mind and body. It's very important. Those two go hand in hand. And that mind can go beyond to maybe the soul, right? We look at a side of where you can really enhance the conscious and the subconscious to act as one team because you want to be the perfect human being, the perfect anatomy, the perfect body, so then you can get to that age of 100, but in order for that, your environment has to be right. Your mind has to be right. Your body has to be right. It all plays a huge component of it to become that perfect person. So when I see things that to have the recovery side of it, the physical side, the actual the bio, they call it the biological activation. You have to think those cells need to be in its best potential with the best signal to do its job. these cells have the ability. It's just they go dormant. They just go, like the zombie cells, like, right? Well, you have to have the right signal to engage it. If you don't have that signal, of course, as we age, we start losing our signals, just like hormones. Our hormones decrease, just same thing. We have to get the right signal in our body. So there goes the physical side. But also, when you start getting physically, like, like injured, or you start slowing down, or something's going on with maybe arthritis, well, the physical side will start playing with the mental side. Now, the mental side is like, oh, I feel depressed. I can't go for my walk. I can't go for my run. I can't be as active as when I was a teen. So then now here comes the mental side. So you have to have all the components to it, including the spiritual side. You have to have something better, bigger, stronger than us as humans to lift us up. So those are the biggest components that I feel that a lot of athletes that understand about performance, recovery, and really the spiritual side of things put it all together. So there's a big faith base, there's a belief in yourself, and also you believe in your team and your therapist and your doctor to put you in that world to get you in that mode. So yeah, it's a whole gamut of everything that you have to put together. And people that really don't like, when you really push yourself, you really push yourself to like maximum 100%. Some people say 105, 110%. When you push yourself there, it is a toll to your body and your mind because you think you're at 100% physically, but your mind may trick you, say that's only 40%. Let's make it to 100%, and then we'll cap it there. There's a lot left in there. So, you know, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of components in there, and they all have to work as a team.
Wow. Uh, it reminds me, and all of us listening to this right now, that I believe that mental load is never kind of separate from the physical recovery. As we explained, the different kind of aspects that come into the picture when you're talking about regenerative healing, right? Dr. Tommy, if I talk about not just about the elite athletes, but to everyday patients, kind of. So, how does this show up in real life? When recovery methods, some of the recovery methods that you mentioned, aligns with the body instead of overriding it. So what are the kind of changes do people notice first and
Okay.
second, and so on?
I guess the biggest non-athletic, the elite athletes world, you start noticing it is as you age, right? As we age, we're not, I'm 58. So when I'm 58, my mind is at in the 20s. I still feel that I can run, jump, I can do that stuff. But physically, I have to be cautious, right? Because we don't have that bright signal that we want as if we're younger. Because when we start doing any type of a trauma damage, we quickly recover when we're younger. So now we don't have that ability to be, that quick recovery. So it's about being active, but understanding about recovery. So I always feel that when you take the person, at this stage of their life, 40 plus, it's about staying active. But then you have to have the right signals to keep the tissue in its best ability to have you be active. So again, do your activity, recover quick as possible. Use things like regenerative medicine, signaling that helps you do that type of rebuilding, regenerating, and then go back and do that particular activity. So when we see people like me and anybody else that are kind of like pushing into that 50s, 60s, even 40s, we're looking at longevity and not so much the age. We're looking at the active lifespan. I want to be able to walk and run and travel in my hundreds, 90s. That's the big thing is that how do I get that? I need to keep my tissues, my cells, and everything activating correctly so it responds to those needs that I need.
Wow. And, Dr. Tommy, this also reminds me of a podcast that I recently listened to. It was, I believe, by Charles Mayfield. I'm not sure if you have heard his name. In that, basically, he covers, so there's this, you would say, or many would say, it crazy. So there he talks about fasting for about 120 hours. All right. And that is again very much linked to, I would say, regenerative healing in a sense. So what he shares in that podcast, and I think this is also, I read it, so I did some research on my own, and I found out that uh, when a person actually doesn't eat for that long, so 120 hours, so that's about what, 5 days? When you don't eat for 5 days, right? Um, you actually are reverting back the process of aging. So what I read and what I heard about is that so basically your cells start engulfing or eating, in simpler words, your damaged cells, to produce energy. So I believe you're the best person to ask this to. What do you think about fasting? The consequences of fasting for such a long time, and there are a lot of people that are doing this, right? So I'm just curious to know that to what degree do you think this really helps, or if this helps at all?
So fasting, there's that intermittent fasting and that long period of fasting. So
Yeah.
when I was in the military, we know, through tests that the human body can withstand 30 days without eating, right? And that's their survival.
Wow.
Yeah, you don't have to. You can survive with 30 days with no food. So
Oh.
there is that component of it. So 5 days, it's only a fraction of the whole entity of the actual, like, getting close to death. But when you
Mm.
think about like dieting, right? You're just basically, neutralizing the intake, and then you need calories, you need energy. So it has to do something, right? Depending on your activity, if you do a slow burn, well, you can, utilize the stored, the energy source in adipose or fat tissue. If you go too fast, you burn the actual, like the amino acids or the protein in muscle. So you break down muscle too fast, right? So it depends on what you're doing through that 5 days. So that's the energy consumption side of it. But as far as the biological side of it, it's almost like a reset, right? A lot of people say it's like a
Right.
reset of your body. You want to cleanse your body, allow it to like pull from its own toxic and utilize what that energy is depleting, and then either excrete it out, move it, and then really get back to its original like healthy state. So when I
Mm.
think about
Make
fasting, yeah, so I think about fasting, there's a religious component to it. There's all kinds of things that people do in its way, and it does, give you clarity. It gets you clearer. Now, is it because you don't have that saturation of blood, with the glucose in there and all? It's like, you know, insulin that's if you're a diabetic, you can't get that glucose out of your blood. So you have to like either do something like exercise to burn it, or
Yeah.
fasting will burn it. And then maybe during that time, you start getting clarity because your blood, the viscosity is thinner. So now you're able to function correctly. And then now your cells that have the oxygenated blood gets more of that oxygenated blood. So it could be a whole gamut of things. But there's nothing wrong with fasting. Everybody should fast. You should feel it. And then you really want to reset your body, because when you're in a bad habit of eating junk food and stuff, it's good to reset, stop that period of like, you know, learning that bad
Yeah,
behavior,
going to
eating
hardcore.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a good component to it. So as far as the biology of it, I'm not a real expert when it comes to like, like fasting and nutrition. I just know that I do it, and it's very important that it, like everybody else, you feel that hunger pain the first couple hours, and then all of a sudden it relieves itself, and then all of a sudden
Yeah.
clarity
And
comes
it's
in.
gone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden you start thinking, wow, I have more energy. I have a little sense of like, like durability into what I need to do the next couple hours.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, Dr. Tommy. And I've never fasted because I think I'm way too skinny. But I- no, but I'll tell you what. So, there's this guy in my office. Uh, he had an he so the record that he didn't eat for was 110 hours, and that dude just comes back from the gym, not eating anything for 110 hours, and he looks energetic as ever, right? And I asked him, what's the secret to this? And he said, dude, you must listen to this podcast. And that's how I got to know about, uh, about the regenerative healing that we're talking about today. So, but yeah, it's kind of insane, how complex our human body is. So, Dr. Tommy, if I have to, end this on a note, um, I want to understand that, is there any degree to which we are able to regenerate the tissue? Does it end at 100%, or is there some scars that remain? Nonetheless, how much you try to biosignal it through the drugs or spiritual stuff. So where do you think that gaps up to? If
Yeah.
I have to say.
So the big thing that you have to go back into biology and understand about chromosomes and DNAs, and then the ends of these chromosomes are these things called telomeres, right? Telomere is what allows you to how many replications you can do, right? So when it replicates, you make these things called, mitosis, daughter cells, and then you can start actually having, multiple kind of cells, right? So then you replace those cells. Our body always goes to a cycle, right? We want to destroy and rebuild 1-to-1 ratio. So these things are there to give us our ability to have that restoration back, right? But here's the problem. As we age, we slow things down because those telomeres shorten down and they go into a thing called senescence because you only have so many of those replications from RNA and DNA. So once that go into like what they call senescence or zombie state, well, you're basically it just sits there and it can't do nothing. It doesn't want to miss code or miss kind of like grow something other than what it's supposed to be, meant for. So the secret with this is that inside of all these signals, right, there's also a signal or an enzyme that increases telomeres, and that's, telomerase. Telomerase increases those telomeres. Once you get that in your body and then it grows the telomeres back, well, now you're back to that 1-to-1 ratio, breakdown, rebuild, breakdown, rebuild. So that's where the trend is. This regenerative medicine is all about the right signal to your existing tissue to turn on. It's not so much stem cells and it's going to mutate into your cells. It's impossible. That chromosome, the air chromosome, two different codes, right? But it's about the signal that these stem cells secrete, called EVs, extracellular vesicles, in proteins, cytokines, all kind of messages that go into your body. And the neat thing about that, it's cell-free, no nucleus, no chance of a DNA to do some type of growth in your body called tumor. So you want the signal.
Mhm.
And then there you go. There goes your telomeres increasing. Here goes replication. And now you're back to normal function in the biological sense. So it's all about the signals.
Wow, so it's almost, if not, at least, a 95% or, more, even 100% recovery at times, right? If that's practiced with, just not the physical aspect, but the spiritual aspect as well. Now, that makes sense, how you explain, how cell divisions work. And essentially, you're helping that factor multiply itself by, working on the thing that helps in the mitosis, right? So that makes a lot more sense right now. Um, and I have always thought about how um, complex the human biology really is. I mean, all kind of biology, amazes me. If you look at uh, plants, for example, so that's a different kind of biology. But still, if you're just talking about the human biology, right? I mean, consciousness, for example, would I believe it would require a whole podcast on its own. But what I'm trying to say is, what I'm taking away from this conversation, Dr. Tom, is that I think healing works the best when we stop fighting the body and sort of start partnering with it, right? With the biosignals that you talked about, and then comes the spiritual context as well. So, thank you so much, Dr. Tommy, for bringing so much insight into this conversation. And I just want to ask this for listeners who want to learn more about your work and explore this kind of regenerative approach further. Where's the best place for them to find you at?
Yeah. So you can go on my website, which is RHEEGEN.com. And you can, understand about stem cells and then what the actual information we're trying to get the signals. And then the future, which is a topical application. And also, if you have more questions, I wrote a book. So I wrote a book giving you more of a scientific side of it and the layman side of it about stem cell and the future. And that's on Amazon, which is the title is called The Future of Regenerative Medicine. And then just type my last name in there, RHEE, and it should pop up. And then, of course, you got all the paperback, hard, and audio, and I think ebook too. So it's all there.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing all the details, Dr. Tommy. I would make sure that all the links are in the show notes for everyone listening to this. And with that, guys, I want to thank you all for joining us on this kind of amazing conversation about regenerative healing on Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. And if today's conversation made you aware about recovery or self-trust in you, I want you I want you to take a moment to sit with that insight today, because I think healing doesn't rush, and neither should we. Until next time, stay well, stay grounded, and keep choosing health that supports your whole life.